Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. We're pleased to be able to bring you three interesting local citizens, veteran pilots, who will be talking to you about their varied careers. And they're emanating from the new Murfreesboro Airport Terminal and Business Center. Gentlemen, welcome.
Morning.
First of all, we have Donald McDonald, Bobby Huddleston, and Larry Williams. Gentlemen, all of you veteran pilots in various parts of the profession, and we're excited to hear about your careers. Let's start with the gentleman from the class of 49, Bobby Huddleston, Robert A. Huddleston, better known as Huddy. Bobby, tell us about your career.
Well, I started off over at the college airport in about 1948, but I lived about 2 blocks from the airport itself on the college property. I lived over on Woodbury Road, which is now East Main Street. And I'd hang around over there when I was about 9, 10 years old, riding my bicycle up there. And college airport actually started in the early 40s with a CPT program, which is a college pilot training thing that they had just before the war, World War II. And so that was really the start of it. But the first airplane that ever landed on the college property over there was a Howard that he had an emergency or something and landed in his nosed the airplane over. And,
before we go further, let's ask Donald McDonald how he got started.
Well, it's kind of an ironic situation. I went to MTSU as a freshman and was taking pre-engineering. I had no interest in aviation, to be honest with you, and had only had one long flight to California commercially. But I liked the part of flying to California. I really enjoyed that. And then when I started at MTSU, I was taking pre-engineering, and the courses were tough, and I spent a lot of time studying. And I asked my advisor, I said, "Is anything I can do to lighten this load, man? It's killing me." He said, "Go out to the airport and see Muller Lanier, who was running the airport at that time, and he will give you navigation, meteorology, and some workbook courses. And if you fill out those workbooks, you'll get A's, and it won't be that hard." And I did. And of course, when I went out there, Miller was a good salesman. And he said, "Come on, let me take you flying." And I said, "Well, I can't afford that. I was born in Blackman on a farm and didn't have the money to do that." But he said, "Come on, let me take you on a joyride." And I did. And of course, I went home and asked my dad if I could take flying lessons. And he said, "Well, we'll see if we can scrape up the money." And I did. And I received my private pilot in 1957.
Larry, tell us about your start as a pilot.
Well, John, the night I graduated from Central High School, a buddy of mine and I went to Daytona and spent a week down there. And the last day, it was Saturday, we had to leave that afternoon to start back home. And the whole time we were there, we saw this guy towing banners up and down the beach. And I said, that'd be the best job in the world. And I said, I was thinking about taking flying lessons, but my parents said it was too dangerous. But I was about to turn 18, so I could do what I wanted to do by then. But we came back here on Sunday, and Monday morning we came out here to the airport and walked in, and there's a guy behind the counter, and we said, "Well, we want to talk to someone about taking flying lessons." About this time, the door opened up to the air-conditioned office where Chief was in. He went by Chief, no one there. He came out and said, "Boys, come on back here. Let me talk to you." And before we left there, we'd signed up for what was called the 3110 student, which was $3,110, and you got your commercial and flight instructor certificate. And it all went from there. When he explained to us that if you got your tickets, I'll hire you at $3 an hour.
Okay.
And we said $3 an hour. That was when minimum wage was $1. So that's great. And so, but April the next year, I was a flight instructor, and I went from there.
Very good. Bobby, you retired as a airline pilot, I recall.
That's right. No, I went to work at the airlines in 1955, and I retired in 1986. And I flew, started off in DC-3s and ended up in 737. So spent a lot of time after 30 years.
Would you have any idea how many hours you've flown?
About 30,000.
Okay. Tell us more about your career then, Bobby.
Well, the way I just, like I say, I'm kind of like what Larry's talking about. I learned to fly at the college airport, and Miller got me going over there, and I didn't have any money. And so I started, once I got a private license, he had me riding with other students to build their time up, and he was paying me a little. And so I worked my way through. I didn't have to spend that 3110 that he's talking about. I think I ended up, all I spent was all about, say, $450, something like that. And then I worked my way through the rest of it. So it worked out pretty good.
When we refer to College Airport, a lot of our viewers may not realize it, but what is now the Murfreesboro Municipal Airport started out on the MTSU campus or the MTSC campus.
That's correct. Yeah, it was, well, that's where they had the CPT program. That's when it really started. And that lasted till, say, 1940, 40. And then there was an outfit where the Forest building hangar is down there. It was a hangar. And there was a place called Air Repair. And they did all of the maintenance work and all, and he ran the thing. And then when the CPT program was over, Miller Lanier married Nancy Zumbro, and he was from Talladega, Alabama, and so he wanted to stay here. And so he started a flight school out there, and that was the name of the game. That's where we all started, I guess, back in those days.
Donald, you actually have a hangar on your farm, as I recall.
That's correct. When I moved back here from Franklin several years ago, my wife said, quit flying those ultralights, you're going to get killed. And of course, I'd flown ultralights for years. And I said, well, she said, just can't you put an airstrip here somewhere? And I said, I don't know. We'll look. And her brother was a civil engineer, and he came out and helped me, and we surveyed and found that we had a good place for an airstrip, 2,350 feet long, 100 feet wide. And so I built a hangar and bought a real airplane, as she calls it, and started flying off the airstrip. We still have it in operation. Second airport in the city of Murfreesboro.
Very good. How many planes do you have?
2 now. I just have a Cessna and a Super Cub.
You flying a lot just for pleasure, right?
Yes, sir. Strictly for pleasure.
As I recall, you sometimes fly to other towns and have coffee with the folks in that airport.
Oh yeah, you have to go somewhere, and so we have groups that fly together to a certain location, eat breakfast or eat lunch, and social situation, more or less, you know.
Larry, tell us about your current flying career.
Well, I started out here, of course, in flight instructing, and then about a year and a half, I went to Nashville, worked for a couple of operators down there, flight instructor, charter pilot, corporate pilot. And I flew for a couple of small airlines, commuters. And I guess the last flying job I had was here as a corporate pilot. And then I went to work for the FAA in '76. And I worked as an aviation safety inspector for almost 34 years. I started out in Alabama, I went to Juneau, Alaska a couple of years, back to Oklahoma City as a flight instructor in the FAA Academy. I came back here to Nashville, went to headquarters in Washington for a year. I came back here. In the last 6 years, I was assigned to Washington headquarters. The last 3 years, I was assigned to the international office. And I went all over the world doing what we call technical assistance to civil aviation authorities, so we can get them up to standards to meet international standards so they can send their airlines to the United States. And I got them ready, and then sometimes we were on a team that actually did the audit. And when I retired, and almost 10 years ago, I've been doing consulting and all over the world, different civil aviation authorities and airlines and expert witness and stuff like that. And I've only got 12,000 hours, so nowhere near what Huddy got. But
Well, as opposed to being an airline pilot as he was, you were flying regularly almost every day, I guess. Where necessarily in your career it wasn't that way.
no, what flying I did was to stay current and give check rides and things of that nature.
Are you still working for FAA?
No, I retired 2010, and I've been consulting ever since then.
Since then, okay. Bobby, take us on further in your career. What was the most exciting thing you've ever done as a pilot?
Oh, I don't know. One of the most exciting things I did was land at this airport before they finished it good. I got claimed. I was the first person that ever landed here on the Murfreesboro Municipal Airport. That's pretty exciting. And I don't know. I got the DFW. I've got a picture here that is in the paper in Fort Worth that a friend of mine and I, we were the first airline crew to fly passengers off of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport one morning about 5 o'clock in the morning. So that was another first. And I did fly the first trip from Frontier Airlines into Memphis. And they made a big deal out of that. They had a big party and they flew my family down to Memphis from here. The state did. It was quite a deal, but no, that's lots of things happened 30 some odd years, but anyway, that's about it.
Donald, tell us more about your flying experience.
Well, over the years, I've mentored a lot of young fellows at MTSU, both in the mechanic program and the pilot program, and sponsored scholarships here at MTSU for these people that aren't able to go to school otherwise. These are not nice kids, but they just didn't have the money to go to school. So we sponsored 2 scholarships and made a contribution to MTSU, and consequently they named a hangar for me over here. But the thing I'm very proud of is this year I was elected to be in the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame.
Oh, wonderful. That takes place every year in the fall, I believe, as I recall.
It does, that's correct. This year, due to COVID, they're going to cancel and have the ceremonies next year in 2021.
Okay. And you and your wife made a significant gift to the airport program at MTSU, and you mentioned about the hangar name for you. That was very, very wonderful. Larry, take us on. What is the most challenging thing you ever had to do as a pilot?
Probably giving check rides when you doing emergency procedures and things of that nature, and making sure the guy taking the check ride doesn't do the wrong thing. And then, of course, as a pilot, well, actually working for the FAA, I got to travel all over the world the last 3 years, and Africa, Central America, South America, and one of the jobs I had, I was a team leader to get Nigeria up to our standards to pass a audit so they can send their airlines to the US. And I accomplished that right before I retired, but a little short story about Murfreesboro. I went back to Nigeria to do some work with one of the airlines, with the largest airline, and I met with the team, the management team, and the director of operations. His name was Adu Sanusi. And we had the in briefing and we got ready to get up, and he said, come on, I'll show you around and look at, show you where everybody is and how you can find people and the materials and all. And he looked at my business card and he stopped and turned around and smiled. And he said, Murfreesboro, I love Murfreesboro. I said, what? He said, yeah, I learned to fly there.
Is that right?
Yeah, back then the flight school was not MTSU, and the name of it was International Flight Center. And I asked him, I said, how did you end up there? He said, well, I was looking for a place to learn to fly, and it's a lot cheaper to come over here to fly than anywhere else in the world, really, and more convenient. So he said, I saw this place called International Flight Center. So he showed up in Murfreesboro. He spent a little over a year here. And I said, "Did you go to MTSU?" He said, "No, I went over there a lot and hung out in the grill and the library." And at that time, his daughter was about 8 or 10 years old. I keep up with him on Facebook, and he is trying to talk his daughter into coming to MTSU and learning to fly. So I don't know what's going to happen or not, but we'll see.
The International Center had its offices on Vine Street, as I recall, didn't it?
Yeah, MTSU got their own airplanes a few years ago when International Flight Center, of course, went out of business, and the airport was taken over and managed by the city at that time.
Yeah. Gentlemen, you're all coming to us today from the new Murfreesboro Terminal and Business Center. Tell us a bit about it. Bobby, what's your impression?
Oh, it's just absolutely beautiful. Looks like a Taj Mahal compared to the College Airport when I started. No, it is really something nice, and they've done a lot of good planning in this. It's just first class. The whole works. They've got a lot of stuff here that you never even think about being at an airport. It is. They've done good with it.
Now, either you or Larry or Donald are coming from the boardroom, isn't that right?
I'm in the office of the manager, airport manager here.
Okay, Chad Gerke.
We're in different places. All of us in different rooms, I think.
Okay. And Donald, you're in the
I'm in a
boardroom?
meeting room here. It looks like it's big enough for about 10 or 12, probably 15 people. But there's another room next door that'll hold, I don't know, 50 or 60 people easy.
Okay.
And then
Donald, you're in the boardroom, right?
Yeah, and MTSU has rented out one end of the terminal building, and that classroom is big enough for 60 some odd people. Of course, right now during the COVID, they've got it down to about 30 people.
It might be interesting to know, John, last year, MTSU flew 15,000 hours, training hours, and they have 27 airplanes that they train in, and they are busy. In fact, some of our pilot friends say, "I'm not going to Murfreesboro for all that traffic they have up there," but it's not that bad, actually. They're just talking. But anyway, we're very proud of them. And then the other flight training facility here does about 8,000 hours a year. So we have a lot of traffic in the Murfreesboro Airport, probably one of the busiest small airports in the state, if not the busiest.
Yeah, it's been a real asset to our community in the whole Middle Tennessee area, I know. What are your plans for the future, gentlemen, as far as flying? Anything unusual? Any trip you'd like to take that you've never made?
Who are you asking? Who are you asking? Not me. I've been there and done
Each of you.
that.
Well, John, when I went to work in the international office at Washington headquarters, I remained here. I didn't have to move to Washington. And my first trip was to China, and I had about 3 days notice, and I had to get a visa, and the visa was so close, it had to be shipped from Washington, and it got here on that, what they call first FedEx or something, which is 8 o'clock in the morning. And I got in a car about an hour later and took off to China, and I was kind of worried about what was going on over there because, it's a communist country. And I got to the airport and had a car take me down to the hotel, and I walked in the hotel, and it's very commercialized now. It's capitalized, so to speak. It's not like you would think. And they were playing the Johnny Cash song. So, and I've been all over with my job with the FAA and consulting all over South America and Europe. I had one consulting job that was about 6 months, about 2 weeks at a time in Bahrain. And I had to look on the map, see exactly where that was. That's a little island right off the coast of Saudi Arabia, but it's,
Okay.
yeah. And I went to Saudi, and I've been all over Central and South America.
Is there a flight or an air trip that you always wanted to take or make and never got to, but still would like to? Bobby, how about you?
But an airplane I wanted to build? Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about? Well, not really. I always like a pit special. I never did get to fly one, and it just it's quite a little biplane. It's an acrobatic biplane, and it's something else. Oh, something else I wanted to tell you about here in the terminal building. They have a commercial kitchen here, and they can have big banquets. They got a banquet room on the north end of the building down here. It'd probably seat about 100 people or so, more than that. And the city can do it, or whoever. I guess they can manage that somewhere or another. But it's really something else down in here.
John, you were talking about going somewhere or having been somewhere exciting. Several years ago, I went to New Zealand and flew with a family over there that owned a sheep station. He had 2 Cessnas, and he would get you checked out to be a New Zealand pilot. And I obtained my New Zealand pilot license over there and enjoyed 22 days of mountain flying on the South Island of New Zealand. It's a beautiful country. If you ever get a chance to go there, you need to do it.
I guess mountain flying is some beautiful scenery then.
It was lakes, fjords, mountains. I saw some of the worst airports I'd ever seen. They have strips on top of the ridges there where they distribute what they call super, which is superphosphate. We know it's superphosphate. And they put fertilizer on those ridges for the sheep to graze on. And those are the craziest pilots I've ever seen. I can't believe they landed on those strips. A lot of them wound up crashing the airplanes too, for that matter. But anyway, we had a lot of fun over there and very nice people in New Zealand.
Donald, you regularly fly up to the big air show in Wisconsin, do you not?
I do. I've been up
Tell
there
us about
before.
that.
Well, I've been there, I think, 40 years in a row, except for this year. Of course, they didn't have it because of the virus, but it's the largest number of airplanes in 1 week anywhere in the world. It's grandiose. All the distributors, all the manufacturers have booths, tents. I'd say it probably covers 150 acres, and it's 600,000 people attend, and approximately 10 to 15,000 airplanes there in 1 week. And when you land there, you land 3 at a time on the runway. They have colored dots, and about a third of the way down the runway, and they tell you to land on the green dot, the red dot, the blue dot, and then they have kids that volunteers that help you get taxi off and get into the parking lot. But a lot of camping, a lot of fellowship. It's a fun time for a pilot. If you've never been, you need to go.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting experience. Larry, how about you? Do you ever attend that show?
Oh yeah, I've been to Sun and Fun a bunch of times, and Oshkosh, and with the FAA, I worked the show at Sun and Fun several times, which was pretty hard duty, I guess. But yeah, I've been to all of those. It's really something to see all those airplanes land out once. They land in the grass, they land on the taxiways, and they seem to work them in. They never have an incident or accident. So, and like Donald says, Oshkosh is the busiest airport in the world there for about a week.
I'll bet. Yeah. Bobby, what's the most memorable experience you've ever had as a pilot?
Oh Lord, I don't know, John. I've had so many good ones. I don't know how to even start. I guess I don't even know. I wouldn't even venture a guess on something like that. Just had a lot of fun. Been a lot of places, done a lot of things.
I'm sure you've piloted a lot of interesting people too over the years.
I have. I had a deal one time that I came from Fort Worth, came over to Nashville and back in the DC-3 days and picked up some people from Vanderbilt and took them. There's the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and all, and it took them out to the Rockefellers' place in Arkansas, and we stayed out there. I landed and put them out. And they just had a sod strip on this ranch out there, and got to meet him. And we landed at the airport, and I went back and opened the door. And there's a great big guy there standing there with a khaki outfit on, his shirt sleeves torn off. And he opened the door and started down the steps. And he raised his hand up, ready to shake hands with me. And he said, "Hi, I'm Len Rockefeller." And I said, oh man. So anyway, we let the people off and they took them they had places to take them over to this place there. And he said, if y'all want to, come out here in the morning, I'll have somebody ride you around over the ranch here. So anyway, we did that. And next morning we got out there and there was a Cadillac convertible sitting there. And then Rockefeller rode us around over the ranch there for about an hour, just the three of us and him. And we really enjoyed that. But we flew for him out there for about 3 days right on his farm. So that is a memorable time of day.
I'm sure, yeah. And Donald, how about you?
Oh, I don't know.
Particular recollection you have?
Well, when I was flying out here one day, as all young pilots, they want to test their abilities. And so we were flying an old PA-11, and I decided to go out to our home farm there in Blackman and land in the hayfield. They were cutting hay, and I landed in the hayfield. And of course, got out and showed my dad the airplane, and I was trying to get a little more money, you know what I mean? But anyway, unbeknown to me, I picked up a bunch of hay on the tail wheel. And when I got back to Murfreesboro and landed middle of there that we've all talked about and known, came out and said, where'd you get that hay? And I said, well, I think I got low coming over the fence and hung some Johnson grass down there. And he knew exactly what I'd done. He's a pretty sharp dude. He didn't come in on a load of pumpkins. But those are fun times that you had back when you were learning and doing crazy things.
Larry, give us one of your recollections and we'll wind up the program.
Pardon me, John, I didn't hear you.
I mean, what recollection do you have as a memorable experience?
Oh, well, when I was flying charter in Nashville, I had one of these hurry-up trips. Johnny Cash needed to go somewhere up in Indiana, and I was the only one around, so I took Johnny up there back in the 60s. And it's funny, later on, in Africa, especially, music country is really big, country music. And they would ask me where I'm from. I said, well, near Nashville. And almost every time they said, oh, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison. And I said, do you know Johnny? I said, well, I knew him for a couple of hours. You flew Johnny Cash? I said, yeah.
How about that?
What about Elvis? I said, no, I never flew Elvis.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your recollections and coming to us from the new Murfreesboro Terminal and Business Center and your reflections and recollections on your experience as a pilot. Bobby Huddleston, as a matter of fact, the first visitor here, Donald McDonald and Larry Williams. Gentlemen, thank you for all you have meant to aviation and particularly to the local airport and the local community. Thank you for joining us for Murfreesboro Storytellers.
Thank you, John.